Meeting of the Watchung Borough Board of Education on February 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that the advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung at which formal action may be taken. This meeting is being conducted remotely using communication technology. Instructions for joining the meeting and participating in public comments have been posted on the district website and sent to Watchung Borough and the Watchung Public Library, as well as to the school community through an email blast. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda at points in the meeting provided for the public to address the board. Members of the public also have been given the option to submit public comments to the board secretary via email or written letter no later than 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Recording or photographing other than for private personal use requires the consent of parents/guardians whose children may be included in the image. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, just in case there's any board members that are in as attendees, if you could just raise your hand. I don't see any, but some of the names I don't recognize. Okay, so roll call. Mr.
Here.
Barbella? Mr.
Here.
Buccarelli? Mrs. Harvey?
Here.
Mrs. Ingracia? Mr. Kraft? I think he'll be joining us. Mr. Mobus? Mrs. Murad? Mrs. Posehn? And Mrs. Scharf?
Here.
Okay, we have 4 recorded present currently. 5, I'm sorry, 5 recorded present currently.
Okay, so we would like to proceed with a presentation from our architect on the long-range facility plan and the potential referendum. Patrick, I let you take it away.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Rich, are you going to bring up the, or do I have the ability to do that?
You should have the ability to share your screen if you have the presentation ready.
Okay. Let me find. Okay, I'm not able to, it's been disabled for right now.
Okay, I'm checking with Manny.
Yeah, take your time. I'll see if I can find the document as you're doing that.
I believe Adam just joined.
Good evening.
Hey, Adam.
Good evening.
Okay, Rich, I found it. If you can give me screen sharing abilities.
You should. Do you see a share screen button at the bottom of your screen?
I
You
do,
should be
yeah.
able to do that now.
All right, excellent. I think. How's that?
There we go.
All right, fantastic. All right, that wasn't too bad, right? Okay. All right, well, let me just open up. It's good to be with everybody here in Watchung. We always wish we can be, and hopefully someday be there in person, make this a little more personal and generate some better interaction. We're going to do our best here with Zoom. But in any event, we're here tonight. I have Frank Bolvey from my team. We're here tonight to talk about the Watchung Borough Public Schools Long-Range Facility Plan. This is where any capital project or any other method of doing projects is really born. And we're going to explain the process and how we get there, and then we're going to talk about your schools. The objectives with the long-range plan, and this presentation in particular, is to give the overall Board of Education and the community a developed understanding of what the conditions of your buildings are. And we're hoping that through this presentation and another that we have planned on March 11th, we want the Board of Education to come to consensus and start to prioritize the projects that are most important to them and that are critical to the public schools and your community. And of course, the ultimate goal would be to move those critical items or critical projects to a potential referendum vote by the community. This is the design team. Just a little bit of background. We've been in the district for about 4 years. We have a great understanding of your buildings through several projects that we've done with the administration. Like I said, myself and Frank are here tonight. My business partner, Phil Kokosa, who handled the engineering portion of it, is not with us, and Jess is also not with us. She handled a lot of the floor plans that you're going to see in a few weeks, as well as some of the interior design elements. So overall, the presentation you're going to hear us talk about Category A and Category B. Category A, we're going to label as your facilities conditions assessment. There's kind of two parallel rails that we're running on when we're doing a long-range plan. There's a facilities assessment and an educational assessment. For the group who are not familiar with what a conditions assessment, if you can compare it to a home inspection, you buy a house, you have a home inspector come into your place, and he identifies all the deficiencies within the particular home and gives you an idea of what it's going to cost to replace those. And then, of course, you use that against the purchase price as a bargaining tool. So your facilities conditions assessment, it's basically the same thing, but on a much grander scale. We're talking about buildings that are 50, 60, 70, sometimes 100,000 square feet. But in any event, that's really what a facilities conditions assessment is. We'll talk about the approach and how we go about doing a facilities assessment, and then we'll talk about the actual results of what we found in the two schools. So what is a long-range plan? It's basically mandated by the New Jersey Department of Education. From very early in 2000, they came out with this with a database that they ask architects and school board administrations to populate with all of their assets, ranging from the sites that they have, the buildings, and all of the components within those buildings. So tonight we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna talk about this portion of it. This is your Category A. This is the facilities conditions assessment. And you're going to notice we're going to be rolling out the educational program assessment in early March. So what does a long-range plan do? In a nutshell, it provides a roadmap for school districts like yourselves to plan for future capital improvements. Typically, long-range plan will take you out anywhere between 5 and 10 years. Beyond 10 years, very difficult, especially as it relates to educational spaces, because you don't know what the population is really going to, how it's going to fluctuate in that time period. But it also, for the Department of Education, they keep a database of all all 600 districts in the same fashion that we've done for your district. And it really provides them a platform to distribute any funding that they may have in the way of debt service aid, which is basically help with your mortgage payments if you do decide to proceed the referendum, and or any ROD grants. I have ROD grants up there. There are none available. There's none in the foreseeable future. But basically that's what the DOE uses this database for. The DOE also categorizes your projects. You're gonna hear us talk about health and safety a lot as we talk about the deficiencies that we found in your district. Level 1 is always listed as health and safety. It's the most important to DOE. So when it comes to distributing funding, your level 1 projects will get the most attention over to level 2 and level 3. And you can see the level 1 projects, essential building systems, jump right to the top. Obviously, that's your HVAC. If you're deficient electrically or plumbing problems, you have building envelope problems. They all kind of come to the top in terms of DOE's priority. And then level 2, is pretty broad. You have site upgrades, technology upgrades, and other building systems that are not in level 1. And then level 3 listed there is basically renovations and new construction. This information that you're looking at here comes right off of the NJDOE capital project application. So this is just a short excerpt of what's described in that. So what is the process? Well, we have to meet with the stakeholders. Like I said, we've been in the district 4 years. We're getting to know these buildings. But we need to meet with the stakeholders. We set up interviews over the summer with the Buildings and Grounds Director, along with some of the principals. We walk these buildings. These are the people who are the boots on the ground. They know, they know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. But they help us compile this information into the categories I previously described. And we collect this data and we compile it into a long-range plan. So some of the things that we look at, we'll look at site conditions. We'll start outside, everything from utility connections all the way to the ADA getting into the building. And that includes, we look at your paving areas. We'll look at concrete walks, any retaining walls, exterior lighting. You have, if you might have drainage issues. These are all the items that we kind of pay attention to and make sure we list as deficiencies as we find them. Building envelope, self-explanatory, your roofs all the way to structural integrity of the interior. We look for masonry cracks and things like that. Building interior is also very important. All the way down the bottom there, lavatory conditions. That's a lot of districts we come into. Of course, the lavatories are the last spaces that most districts are able to allocate money to. So we see, and we have been doing a lot of lavatory upgrades over the past few years. But we're looking at interior door conditions, any interior finish conditions you may have. Structural integrity, we'll talk about a little bit about one of the schools where you have, we have some work to do with some interior walls. Security systems, you have front entrance man trap, what they call, of course, access control doors, and monitoring in the way of video monitoring. So these are the things that we look at with the building interiors. HVAC, everything from boilers to controls. And once again, you're gonna see this as most of these projects fall into a level 1 because they are all health and safety related. One of the things I could say about Watchung Borough, they've been pretty diligent over the past few years, changing out some of the air handlers that you have. Like I said, over the past 3 or 4 years, you can really see that your administration is trying to, in every way possible, capital projects and taking an advantage of some of the incentives offered by New Jersey Clean Energy, which is part of the BPU. Electrical systems, once again, pretty straightforward. We'll snoop around to make sure that you're not overloading panels, that you don't have panels that are you don't have panels sometimes that are 80 years old and you can't get parts for. Low voltage and life safety, once again, pretty self-explanatory. We'll look at fire alarms, clocks and PAs and the like. Plumbing systems, everything from your sanitary mains to the domestic water supply, stormwater piping leaving the building. So those are the things we kind of pay attention to with regard to plumbing, and of course, fire protection. Once again, self-explanatory: sprinklers and any fire pumps you may have in the facilities. So we're going to jump into the facilities conditions assessment results. Now, this is the results of your schools. We have only 6 slides, but these excerpt slides are part of a larger report, some 130 pages of description and pictures to give the administration, the facilities committee, and the Board of Education an idea of where we came up with these items. So with that, like I said, Frank Bowlby is with me tonight. He spearheaded the long range plan, all of the walkthroughs. So I'm going to let him speak to the next several slides, and then we'll wrap up with a budget slide. So Frank, are you unmuted?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
So why don't you kick us off with Bayberry?
Okay, so you're going to see the same list here. It's different pictures. You can see in the photos to the left, you've got some concrete sidewalk repair work, replacement work that needs to be done. Roof maintenance, your roofs are in pretty good shape. All included as part of the assessments that Pat mentioned are roof reports done by Tremco, who installed all the roofs. So it really gives you a pretty good snapshot of the condition your roofs are in. There are some areas that need to be replaced. Again, those are indicated in the report. You can see the photo to the left of that slide. You just have some exterior brickwork that needs to be cleaned. It gets tough when you have walls like that are in a on a north wall that doesn't get a lot of light. So you do tend to get some sort of buildup and whatnot there. It's an easy enough thing to fix. As Pat mentioned, the man traps are secure vestibules in every single school. Many of the schools in New Jersey were designed so you could just, come into the school and you could go wherever. The idea of the secure vestibule is you come into the vestibule, and unless somebody in the office actually electronically unlocks a door, that person stays right in there, doesn't get beyond that vestibule. As Pat mentioned, the ADA upgrades, there are quite a few of the toilet rooms in Bayberry that are the original toilet rooms. There are ADA compliant rooms, but you never want to be in a position where you have to locate, switch rooms around based on somebody who actually needs that. It's better if you have them all pretty much, up to code and ADA compliant. Modifying the handrails. Everybody thinks ADA, they automatically think wheelchair, but it's visually impaired. It's people with, any individual with any kind of mobility issue. It could be, a temporary leg brace or their leg in a cast, whatever. So you're just trying to make sure that, everybody can get around the buildings safely. Floor tile abatement. This is really in the older section of Bayberry. You have some of the original asbestos flooring. It's not unsafe, but anytime you want to replace, say, unit ventilators or do any kind of work like that where you're dealing with the floor, it becomes an abatement issue. If you have to do an emergency replacement, then it really becomes an issue. It's better to just, get it replaced while you can before it's a problem. Ceilings. You don't really have to replace the grids themselves. I know the lights were just replaced. I know the district replaced all of the old fluorescent lights with new LED fixtures. that, it's sort of like when you do a home improvement project, you think, oh, I'm just gonna, paint the room, everything's gonna look great. And then you realize how bad everything else looks. Kind of like that with the ceilings. You've got, and it's not the entire school. Again, this is pretty much the older section of the original section of the school, where you've got discolored, mismatched ceiling tiles, the darker grids, and that all kind of plays into the overall atmosphere of the room. As soon as you paint the grid, replace the ceiling tiles, it just brightens up the entire space. Same with the casework. You can see the pink countertop there. That was original to the building. It's a real mishmash of casework in all the schools, really. There's not a lot that's built in. There's a lot of freestanding units that I'm assuming staff have brought in to make the classrooms work. So it's nice to put something in that's a little more uniform and, more importantly, lockable. That way the teacher has control of everything in the room. And is, HVAC upgrades and plumbing upgrades, which are somewhat part of the toilet room renovations. And I guess, we can talk later on about some of the HVAC upgrades that we're looking at. And, Valley View, it's pretty much the same thing. You've got some issues with sidewalks. You don't want it to become a liability issue. Same thing, you can see that same, I'll call it an organic buildup on the building. Again, that's more on the north side of the building. Gets very little light. It's close to the property line. So that's really just a matter of cleaning it off and constant upkeep. Same with the roof, it's maintenance. There is some of the shingled roof that needs to be replaced. Again, creation of a secure vestibule in that main entrance. ADA upgrades. Again, replacement of the ceilings in some of the rooms, and the gymnasium ceiling is in dire need of repainting. I think we put in the assessment report, I'm not sure if the steel deck wasn't primed properly, but there's an inordinate amount of paint that's seems to be loose on that ceiling. Again, you can see the casework. There's it's lockers, which don't really work. And if you don't have lockers, it's just some open bookcases, and that's pretty much it. So it doesn't really work for most of the staff. Considering an addition of a storage building at to put at the rear of the building, and something that we input from the school administration would be to repurpose that rear parking lot into a student courtyard. Could be used for possible educational uses, just a gathering spot, a place for kids to hang out if they're waiting for a ride, whatever, because they have adequate parking. So that tends to be not really an underutilized space. And you can see in that photo there, beyond that silver SUV, those are the two storage units that the school has now, really, that and a storage room next to the art room at Valley View. And it's really not adequate for the needs of the school or the district. And again, HVAC upgrades.
Yeah, so with that, once again, we went through all the categories that we talked about, and this is the culmination of what we found in the report, or what we found. This is the culmination of the report of what we found in your schools. Budget projections. This comes from a much more detailed cost estimate that we've been working on with the administration. But you can see some of the line items that we're talking about. What's really jumping off the page is your HVAC systems. And once again, the administration has done a pretty good job in changing a few of these units out on the roof over the past 2 or 3 years. But that number is really jumping off the page. As with most districts, you are not the only district in this predicament with regard to HVAC. We're working in a few other districts now where they're just struggling. And with the onset of COVID, of course, your HVAC systems, they really come to the forefront. But in any event, under this category A, we're looking at, a total project cost, what I'll call it, of somewhere in the area of 8.5 and change, and with Valley View 4.9 and change. Is there any questions on the material that we covered at this point, up to this point?
I mean, I had a few questions. I don't know how much we have planned to discuss this tonight, but
Yeah.
I've seen the.
Hey, Jess, it may be helpful. I didn't know if he was done. Can I give you the perspective of the committee, and then we can open it up for questions? Because I just.
Yeah, no, it seemed like no one was saying anything.
Yeah,
so
I know. I got it. So we wanted to divide this up into two sections as we spoke about. I always kind of thought that casework, for example, which is a big number, would be in the second presentation, as it's not really, what I would call, part of the lifeblood of the building, which is, kind of what we're talking about here. Having said that, we can talk about casework here, or we can talk about it next meeting, which is maybe we'll have a little bit more time because there's less items. And I think that the way I looked at it was this meeting would be the more objective items, and the next meeting would be the more subjective items, which have to do with quality of the education and the experience in the schools. But the two things that I'll be right up front with the board. The two things that we struggled with in the committee, and they're still on here, and they're on here for discussion, are the decking underneath the solar panels for $420,000. It's, I don't know, Pat, is it 100 feet of sidewalk underneath?
I know that we, to your point, Richard, I know that we have approximately, I thought it was 8,400 square. Yeah, I'm looking at it here right now, 8,400 square feet. We built that number not knowing a lot about the solar canopy. I can tell you that in the time since we last met, I did reach out to the county manager to see if I can get any information on the actual structure of the panel. I also consulted with a structural engineer. And that number, like I said, that number's a shot right now because we don't know a lot about it.
But that wasn't my question. My question is how many linear feet of sidewalk are underneath this? Because I want to explain the situation to the board.
Frank, would you say there's maybe 20 parking spaces?
Hold on, I brought it up on Google Earth.
So it's like 150 feet of sidewalk or something like that.
Yeah, there are 20 spots there.
And how wide are the spots? I'll do the
I
math.
believe they're 9 feet.
Yeah, so 180.
Okay.
180.
So here's the deal. The sidewalk gets slippery in cold weather because there's nothing to stop the water coming down. And we built the sidewalk underneath this, or we built the solar panels underneath over the sidewalk. I think that, it's kind of, I will use the word ridiculous to spend $420,000 to fix a problem that can be handled another way by shoveling and salting a sidewalk, we looked at relocating the sidewalk, to the other side of the solar panels, but there's a berm there and apparently it would interfere with the drainage. So that's one thing. We could look, the parking lot's pretty wide and it's not used as a playground anymore, thank God. We could probably move the sidewalk the other way and move the parking lots. But to me, it's a real hard pill to swallow to spend $420,000 because a sidewalk gets slippery a couple times a year and that there's no other manual way to handle that or just close it off and, with cones, right? So that was number one, and we could talk about that. The other was a storage shed. And a storage shed is in here for what? Is it $340,000 or something?
Yeah, about that.
$337,500. I mean, there will have to be sprinklers in there. So we're using like $250 a square foot for construction of a storage shed. Like I used to run a company that was in the mini warehouse business, and I was telling, this is nothing that our engineer friends haven't heard from me before. Like the biggest, largest amount we ever spent was like 80 bucks a foot, which, it's like a steel building that stores stuff, right? So this is the steel. I think you build a house for $250 a square foot. So those were the two main items that jumped out on us that seemed to me to be very controversial as far as cost versus benefit is concerned. And then the last thing is, we can have the casework discussion, and that's really more subjective too. Sorry, Jessica, I just wanted to give you
No, that's
that
super helpful.
perspective from the board, from the committee.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I did have some, the solar panels were paid for by the county those years ago. You know that. And I would hope, I'm sure you've talked about, whether they have a program that might be similar, to maintain or do retrofits of them, or is it an option? I guess that was one of my biggest questions for DRG, or maybe for the administration, is overall, you constantly are told during your board trainings and in finance discussions that there's usually a 40% state or county, you'll get 40% of it covered through the state.
Mhm.
How does that play into these numbers? You mentioned that it's, a lot of times they're going to choose to fund HVAC and, very integral systems upgrades. Has there been any, and I have the spreadsheet open that you were reading off of with the square footage and the unit costs. How does that figure or figures or that idea play into all of these line items?
What I'll do is I'll speak to what we've already heard from bond counsel. Yes, debt service aid is available for up to 40% of these projects. And from what I understand from Lisa and the conversations we've had with her over the past several months, is that they're funding 85% of the 40%, which ends up to be, and the group has to help me, I think she said 34% or 35% at that point.
34%.
So, yeah.
Is that on everything?
That is on all your renovations. That would be on all your renovations. Anything that they call that is eligible. And like I said, most of your projects are a level 1 project. I'm saying, and I don't know what they'll come back with DOE, but typically those projects are all eligible projects.
And so how does that, when we're looking at total costs of, 13, potentially 16 million, do you bond for that or do you bond minus the debt service aid?
And once again, you're going to have to lean on Lisa. I'm pretty sure you bond for the entire amount and then you get debt service aid on a yearly basis.
So it reduces.
Yes.
The amount reduces. Okay. I had a question that's been on my mind since we first saw these way back, I don't know, months ago. The bathroom compliances. Am I right to understand that certain work triggers that to be mandatory versus not?
When you say bathroom appliance,
The
you said
ADA
bathroom.
compliance upgrades in the bathrooms.
Oh, okay.
So like you wouldn't just go in and do that. But you are sometimes forced to do that if you make other renovations. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, when we go in and when we do renovate a toilet room that does not have a barrier-free toilet, yes, you want to at least introduce one. So you have to provide what they call reasonable accommodation in these schools. So it's always prudent on behalf of the district to introduce a barrier-free toilet, which means you're going to have to eliminate one. Of course, we have to take a look at your toilet count as we're doing that. But we have to make the proper proof. I'm sorry?
That hasn't already been done to get to these
What?
figures?
When you say it hasn't been done, what does that, what do you mean by that?
To count the number, I don't know. I just thought that, I think it's millions of dollars on the bathroom upgrades.
Oh,
And
right,
actually,
right.
my question is not what they are, because I do understand what they are,
Okay.
and making them bigger and wheelchair accessible. But I don't know if I'm phrasing this right. The reason they're not ADA compliant in all bathrooms now is because we're sort of grandfathered in. We haven't done the work to the schools that would trigger a mandatory upgrade to those, right?
Okay.
So what
Okay, so
work on here is triggering the ADA compliance, or is it just because we want to do it now?
The numbers that you're seeing there are broad stroke numbers. Frank, can you elaborate? Would we be doing, and understand, because they're toilet rooms, we always price them out at these big numbers because you're basically renovating a lab. What I always say is we're renovating a lab. As far as the ADA trigger, it really doesn't have a big impact on the overall number that we're trying to renovate these toilet rooms under. Does that help? In other words, we're not necessarily doing these for ADA access. We're doing them to bring them up to a nice aesthetic.
Yeah, some of the toilet rooms are from the original 1940s, 1950s construction, so they've never really been upgraded at all. They're fairly well maintained, but at some point, when you do go in to upgrade them, you're going to have to deal with the ADA compliance.
Jessica, if I may jump in here with you, are we talking about Bayberry and Valley View, or just Bayberry?
Both schools, but I believe, I don't have the plans in front of me. I believe that Valley View has fewer of the original, unrenovated toilet rooms than Bayberry does. Bayberry has more its gang toilets and even staff toilet rooms the individual toilet rooms are undersized, and something that we had a lot of discussions with, with operations committee is in that original wing of Bayberry, you've got the classrooms that have the little individual toilet rooms where it is literally just a small toilet and maybe 20 square feet with a sink on the outside. So the discussion was, if you wanted to use those as pre-K or K rooms, those bathrooms would have to be modified. You don't have to do every single room. It would just be, that's why that number was decreased from what we had originally. It's just, say you want 5 pre-K, K rooms, you would have to take out those little individual toilet rooms and, rebuild it as a roughly 50 to 60 square foot room that's got a toilet and a sink within the room. The issue with the sink on the outside is more of it's a hygiene issue, because the kids are using the toilet and then they're turning the knob to come out and wash their hands outside. So that's a whole other, issue that you have to deal with. And you're talking about really young kids. So you're just not quite sure what you're going to get there. And like Pat said, it's just have really not been updated at all. So some of them are in better shape than others. I think some of the rooms have been, I don't recall, I don't have access to the pictures right now, like you've got at Bayberry, there is a chairlift to get down into the media center, and there are, there's a boys and girls toilet room right off the media center. I don't know if those are, I think they're upgraded to a point. So that's something that you have to look at and just make sure, you don't want somebody to be in a position where they've got to, have the chairlift come down, get back up, and then go to a restroom that, they can have access to. You just want to make sure that everybody, like Pat says, they have to be easily accommodated. You don't want somebody to, just have to go a great distance, especially if they have some physical condition where they may not have the time to go from point A to D, and get there in time. And like I had mentioned, we've been in situations in some schools where, they finally addressed this, but in a school that didn't have an, accommodations, the school might be set up for grades 1 and 2, but they would take a 3rd grade class and just one class from the district and move it in there because that particular school had, the proper ADA accommodations. And, you get pushback from parents. Same thing, we don't want to say, well, all right, this would typically be grades 1 and 2, but we have a student here that really needs closer access. So now you're kind of completely, redoing your schedule to make accommodations. Whereas if you get, and we're not saying you have to do this right away, but it would be nice to get to a point where all of your facilities were completely ADA compliant. Then you don't have any issues. You never get any pushback from parents, saying that you're not doing the best for their children. Like Pat said, we take a snapshot of the condition of all your facilities. So we just noted all of the toilet rooms that, really needed to be upgraded.
Hey, I hate to interrupt, but Rich, Dave Mobus is having trouble getting into the meeting.
I was on the phone with him. He's
No,
on.
Okay.
I'm on. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
To finish up not to get bogged down on the ADA lavatory upgrades, but Jen, you were asking about which rooms, and it is notable that in Bayberry it's $600,000, and in Valley View it's estimated $270. Once you add in the escalation costs and the soft costs, it's $1 million project. So I think at some point, and that's $1 million out of a $13 million referendum. That's a big, I'd feel more comfortable at some point, not tonight, understanding which ones are crucial. And, I don't think it should be an all or nothing. You either do every bathroom in the school, regardless of how recently it was renovated. And I know none of them are extremely recent. So I just think things like that, eventually, I think board members might need to have a little more time to consider what they consider crucial and maybe not so crucial.
Okay.
And speaking of the escalation and soft costs, I'm kind of curious how the escalation I get, and I think, if we continue printing money, you might even have to raise that. But the soft costs, right? They keep saying get hyperinflation. But the soft costs, really add up. The escalation adds up to $1 million, and the soft costs add up to $3 million out of the total referendum amount on here. So obviously, some of that is your fees.
Correct.
Public schools don't pay permit fees, so those wouldn't be in it. What else am I'm not aware of how it breaks out.
I could break out the 30%. The DOE does allow you to go to 30%. In these turbulent times, I'm recommending to all my clients and the other referendums that we're going to use the full 30% because we just don't know. We just don't know where these prices are going to go. It obviously very unstable with everything that's going on.
Well, the prices are
But you're
included
gonna
in the
have-
escalation, is that right? I mean, the soft costs are more like fees.
So the soft costs are fees, but there is some contingency also built in below, and you'll hear me talk about below the line. We do build in a 5% escalation, but sometimes, and we've seen it, we saw it from 2016 to 2018, that 5% didn't cut it. So you always want to add some below the line, but you would have our fees. You will have DCA fees and potentially review fees. We don't know if you're going to have a construction manager oversee some of this work. There will be environmental testing. There will be environmental abatement, which falls below the line. So those are the types of fees and contingencies that are built in below the line. What I can do is share with the facilities committee what comes from the DOE application sheet, and then you can see where they distribute that 30% below the
Like,
line.
for example, one thing,
Pat,
oh, sorry, Frank.
I was going to say, DOE also charges review fees, even for, educational, non-educational. The projects go down to DOE, by school project, and it's an Excel spreadsheet, and you're basically plugging in numbers, and it tells you what the DOE review fee is, and it's not unsubstantial.
Mhm.
For something along the lines of, say, potentially $13 million, it's going to be a good sized number that DOE gets for reviewing everything. And they basically will, they hold it hostage. Unless the district pays a review fee, they will not release it, and you cannot go out to bid with it. So that's another hunk of money that's included in that the soft costs.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't already done so, I think it would be a good idea to have, and maybe the committee has already done this, but some of the things on here, like, replacing the RTUs, which we already did, the even numbers in last year's budget. Help us understand, did we eat up all those, the 5 and the 30%, were there escalation costs? Were there many soft costs? What were the fees? And will they be similar on this? Just to give us an idea, because it does add up. And in a district with a budget only of 13 and change, to have a referendum amount of more than, our annual budget, and to see so much of it be devoted to these soft and escalation costs, I think it would be helpful to know if they were present doing the exact same work just last year.
I can share with you the application from 2 summers ago when we did some HVAC work, and you'll be able to track those numbers. But once again, the idea of your soft costs, it's really to protect the budget. If you do decide to go to referendum and it does pass in December, some of these projects will be, a year and a half out, only because it's going to take us that long to design. So the idea that we're going to eat up every bit of the soft costs, nobody wants to do that, but it's there to protect us when we do open up your project, that we can easily award it without having to rob from one project and add it to another. But I'd be happy to.
And if you don't
I'd be happy
use
to.
it, they just reserve they lower the debt service. Is that right?
I'm
If
sorry.
you don't use it all, they just reduce the debt service. Is that right?
Yeah, your tax burden would be reduced, as well as any money going toward your debt service. Yes.
So it's just a question of, is the amount unpalatable with all of the added stuff built in and front loaded to the community? And, could it potentially fail because so much was added in that we didn't end up needing? You don't want to leave it on the table. So I guess that's sort of the question, and what I hope that you can work out somehow before we have to make a decision.
And that's fair. I'll collect some information and pass it along to the administration.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Are there any questions or comments from other board members on the presentation of the long range facilities plan?
Rich, I just definitely support your thoughts and questioning about the storage shed over at Valley View, as well as the solar panel issues.
I think the solar panel issues is pretty straightforward. The storage shed is a little bit more intertwined with something else, which is there is a fairly sizable, and I'm thinking I heard like 15 or 1,800 square feet, something like that, being used as storage inside where we were suggesting redoing the art room.
Correct.
And the crazy part of it is, the boxes in storage are in the room with the windows, and the kids are in the room without the windows. So I don't know how that ever happened to begin with, but if you lose that storage space by reconfiguring the art room, then there's there's a need for additional storage. Plus, the existing storage is, it's actually kind of falling apart. There's, when it rains, Dave Walker has described it as, it's almost like the equipment's outside.
Definitely, just to clarify, I definitely support, I love storage, Rich. I mean, I definitely support it. I mean, ask my husband, I love storage, but I just feel like, I don't know for what I feel like it's maybe 3 times what I would imagine, like you had said with your warehouse experience. I just think it's a very high cost for what we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. And the explanations I've been given, and DRG can speak to this, but it has to be built to code, almost like it's going to be an inhabited building, which is strange to me. And it's also got to be union labor, which makes it very expensive. So
Can I
right there with you.
can I speak to that, Richard?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, so you know, when we're talking about a building, and I know you like to use the term shed, but this is by no means is it a shed. When we construct these structures, and we did a few, I'm probably going back 3 years, but the number that I developed right now, bricks and mortar, classroom addition, or any other addition to the school, you're looking at about $400 a square foot. And I understand, believe me, because every district I walk into when we're doing a concession stand, or we're doing one of these storage buildings, because it is a building, I hear the same. I hear the same, if you want to call them complaints about the number. But with regard to the building, it will be a post beam building. It will be engineered, but that's not the end of it. With regard to the foundations, with bricks and mortar, you're more concerned about the bearing capacity and this building staying in place. When you're building a barn or a maintenance building like this, it's basically a sail, because it's a very, very light building. So you're going to see some footings. They're going to be designing some footings that you'll look at it and say to yourself, my goodness, you know, for a little shed. But that's one of the reasons why the footings are a little more robust. It will be an insulated building. We do have to run power out to it. We're looking at approximately 200 feet to run power out to it, and we have to tie fire alarms back to the building. So, you know, going from bricks and mortar at 400 to 225 is not out of the question. And I believe it's a solid number. Once again, to get it awarded, we don't want to spend 325. We want to come in at 275. But in addition to that, there's still some unknowns. And on these small projects, you know, we can be out there excavating for a footing, and I always use the I always use the adage of hitting a Volkswagen, because we actually hit a Volkswagen on another project. But to hit a boulder or something like that, which is going to require some extra excavation, I mean, it just any little change order just adds incredibly to these small projects. In addition to that, you don't get the turnout on these small projects, because, to be honest, a small project like that to a GC is more of a nuisance than anything. So they'll throw a number at it. Where they can make some money on it, as opposed to just getting by on the typical 25 to 30% that they like to make on these buildings. But so that's been my experience. We haven't done a lot of them, but that's basically where I came up with the number.
Well, then let me keep using the word shed and ask if we could just have a shed instead of a building. And it's, by the way, I think it's going to be 250, because the way we're talking, there's going to be plumbing there, because there's probably going to be, you know, sinks and hoses and stuff like that. And maybe
I did not hear that. Yeah, I did not hear that from Dave Walker.
There's going to be a sprinkler system?
I'm sorry?
Sprinkler system?
We're going to be small enough. The building is going to be, the construction type of the building is going to be a small enough footprint where you will not need sprinklers.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, it just seems like a lot of money to spend, and we should really rack our brains to try to understand how we can solve the storage problem, perhaps with other entities like the town or the high school or something. or any kind of less expensive edifice, if we don't like the word shed and I don't like the word building.
Well, and also, Rich, what it could do for you is we have a pretty good arsenal of contractors that we like to reach out to from time to time. Sometimes they're too busy. Sometimes they will throw us a bone. So I'll work with the district. I'll work with Dave to find out exactly what he needs out there. And then I'll sit down with one of these contractors, and then maybe we can find some equilibrium between what you believe it is and what I'm doing to try to protect the project.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Frank and Pat, for coming.
Always a pleasure.
And we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
everybody.
Have a good evening. Board member comments? Are there any board member comments? I actually have one. Last year, the school districts were pretty much caught by surprise when it was announced that we were required to create a restart committee and a restart plan. So I decided to create an ad hoc committee that will focus on the hybrid model for the remainder of this school year, summer programs, and then anything or any type of model that we would face in September.
Close.
So
Okay.
So we want to be a little bit more proactive this time around and try and get ahead of the constant changes of the CDC, the state, and our local health officials as much as we can. So that being said, the same board members that participated in the restart committee will continue to work in this ad hoc. Are there any other board comments? Okay, any announcements from the superintendent?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, with all the recent snowy weather, I want to acknowledge Dave Walker and the entire custodial crew for their hard work. I also want to thank Watchung Borough for all the assistance with salting and plowing at the schools. Likewise, Chief Kelly and the traffic safety police officers have been terrific, making sure our students are safely crossing Sterling Road in the mornings and afternoons, and that parent pickup continues to go smoothly at Bayberry. Also, I want to acknowledge Fire Chief DeSandolo, who's provided us with a safety video for students regarding the dangers of partially frozen lakes and ponds. We appreciate his help and that of Chief Kelly. As for school, we continue with our good fortune in keeping the schools open for in-person instruction, and we're very grateful for everyone's cooperation, support, and patience. As you know, since February 8th, we've had combined cohorts in grades 3 and 4, so that Bayberry has been hosting all in-person students 5 days per week. The transition has gone very well, and I want to thank again our teachers and staff for their support. The caveat remains, however, that should we receive requests that we can't accommodate to move from all remote to in-person, we may have to return to the cohort model in 1 or more grade levels. I also want to emphasize here that the State Department of Health and our local health official are still recommending 6 feet of social distancing, which is a significant obstacle for the middle school where the in-person numbers vary more widely than at Bayberry and where the schedule is very different. With that said, we are pleased that the numbers are dropping in the state and that our region is now in the yellow level on the Cowley Index, but we need to stay as vigilant as possible. Let's remember that I had to send a message earlier today about 3 positive test results. We all want our students back in school, but we have to do this in a safe way, and approaching it incrementally is working well. We believe the early dismissal schedule provides the best balance for a safe educational program at this point, but we will continue to explore ideas for enhanced models with increased instructional time. Finally, we're looking into the possibility of running spring sports at the middle school in a modified way. We're collaborating with the regional sending districts on a possible plan for spring competition. Thank you for your support and patience. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Toda right now for a brief special services update, and then we'll hear from our principals.
Thank you, Mr. Alexis. The Department of Special Services will be hosting monthly parent meetings. The first meeting introduced the department programs and highlighted the roles of the staff. Notes from this meeting and a survey have gone out to parents of students in any of the programs that fall under special services. That survey is requesting input from parents and staff about future topics of discussion. The dates and topics will be posted on the department website, and the meeting links will be emailed to parents. Following our staff presentations and discussions, the CPAG will facilitate additional parent conversations. We hope that parents will find the topics interesting and meaningful, and we hope that parents will plan to join us. The next meeting date will be Monday, March 22nd, and the topic will be decided based on those survey results and with input from the CPAG.
Thanks, Mr. Toto. Why don't we start with Bayberry for the principal's report.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. This is Denise Fickner, principal. Bayberry is celebrating Black History Month by learning about the accomplishments and contributions of African Americans throughout history. Our fourth graders have been sharing interesting facts during morning announcements, and our teachers have been exploring and appreciating Black history through literature, multimedia, and reflective writing prompts with their students. We celebrated Valentine's Day on February 12th by creating electronic Valentine cards and developing connections with each other through fun games and crafts. Students also celebrated Chinese New Year by making paper lanterns and learning about holiday traditions from our families. As Mr. Alexis said, on February 8th, we combined cohorts A and B in 3rd and 4th grade and welcomed students back in person 5 days per week. The teachers and the students are thrilled to spend more time together. Finally, we began our iReady initiative this month with teacher training on getting good data and exploring the process for administering the assessment. Students in grades K through 4 have been working hard to do their best on the iReady diagnostic test in reading and math. Some of our testing was delayed due to snow, but once completed, each student will receive an individualized learning path in the iReady app or website. Teachers are looking forward to utilizing iReady as a tool for differentiating their instruction and meeting students' needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Fickner. Mrs. Kidd is next.
Good evening, everyone. Valley View is celebrating the month of February with 2 important themes, Black History Month and Acts of Kindness. Our school is highlighting various Black individuals. Teachers are infusing discussions and activities that highlight the lives and contributions of multiple men and women of color into their lessons. For example, students in 6th grade STEM and Innovation and Design classes will celebrate Black History Month this Friday by researching and creating an interactive coding project that tells the story of an African American historical figure. Meaningful quotes from notable African Americans are also being shared daily over the announcements. Shout outs to students who engage in random acts of kindness were also shared daily. Each recipient was awarded a certificate and a voucher for Duck Donuts as supplied by the PTO. It was wonderful to recognize our students for their good deeds and strong character. Teachers began administration of the iReady Mathematics Diagnostic Assessment on February 10th. The reading diagnostic administration began yesterday, February 24th. Students are able to work on the assessment during designated class times and all office hours. Teachers are eager for the March 9th professional development, which will focus on how they can utilize the data from the diagnostics to enhance their instructional practices. Valley View School earned first step recognition from the Safe Routes to Schools program. Safe Routes to Schools is a movement that aims to make it safer and easier for students to walk and bike to school. Our Community Outreach Club had a great family trivia night event on Thursday, February 11th. We had over 20 teams play and are looking forward to planning another trivia night. The club is also running a food drive until the end of March. The collection is being run as a friendly competition between grade levels, and all donations will be given to the Somerset County Food Bank. We have added TREPS Club to our list of options for our students. TREPS, short for entrepreneurs, is a project-based learning program that teaches kids in grades 5 through 8 how to start their own business. So far, students have participated in an introductory workshop as well as a Money Matters workshop, where they have completed their first group challenge about pricing. Next, the students will be brainstorming ideas for their products and services to sell. We're hoping to have not only an online event for people to purchase their goods, but also to do something in person in May when the weather clears up a bit for us. The Valley View Spelling Bee was held virtually on Friday the 3rd. Isabella Thomas, a grade 8 student, was our winner. Ms. Thomas will participate in an online regional qualifier this week, and we wish her the best of luck. Our source, it was a busy month. Our source students participated in the Future City competition with Ms. Pistorius on Saturday, February 6th. Future City is a project-based learning program where students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades imagine, research, design, and build cities of the future. The students were able to present their projects and receive positive feedback on their work. Our team, Lunaropolis, earned 4th place in the state, winning a drone and a $1,000 STEM grant. Our DARE program began in the 5th grade on Wednesday, the 24th. Watchung Police Officer Detective Sharif Zayton is our DARE officer and will be working with our students for the remainder of the school year. He will be working with students via Google Classroom and will utilize digital workbooks rather than the traditional paper ones to keep things safe. Young Writers offers several different writing opportunities to middle and high school students. This year, Valley View students participated in the SOS Sagas Trapped. All students in grades 6 through 8 were asked to write a mini saga that consisted of no more than 100 words. It was not required, but it was optional that students submit their writing to the Young Writers program. And of all the Valley View students who submitted their work, 76 students were chosen to be published in the Young Writers annual publication. Congratulations to them all. And that's it for February. We have one more day left.
Thanks, Principal Kidd.
Yep.
The last item in this section of the agenda are the enrollment numbers, which currently stand at 614, 10 more students than we had on the first day of school. And that's a wrap for this section. Mrs. Harvey, thank you for your attention, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Alexis. Okay, Human Resources Committee report. Michelle isn't here, so I'll give it. The committee was given an update on the tech position. The committee was also discussing the administrators, oops, sorry. My screen went out for a minute. The administrator's reimbursement for tuition. And the committee has asked for some additional information before any recommendations are made to the full board. There was also a list of professional learning activities that took place this year that was provided to the committee. A timeline for staff renewals was gone over, and then also a brief overview of the observation process. And then it looks like, besides what's on the agenda this evening as well, the committee also received a resignation and was made aware of the resignation of Ashley Freitas with regret. And that's the HR committee report. Rich, can you please give the operations committee report?
Yep. Okay, we had 2 meetings. It was a bonus month. And they were actually very, very important meetings. The first one we spent almost entirely on the budget review, which we have in the packet, and Rich can give you an overview of the timeline and the high levels of that if the board would like. And second, we spent entirely on the long-range facilities plan and possible planning for a possible referendum with both DRG and our attorney Lisa Gorab from Wilentz. That's it. Rich, do you want me to do a
Thank you,
timeline
Rich.
on the budget?
Sure. So the preliminary budget will be presented on March 11th at the board meeting. And I then have about a week to get it all submitted to the state, but I have most of it already input into the state software. So as long as everything goes smoothly with the next operations committee, where we'll review the final modifications to the budget, which will be next week. Then on March 11th, we'll have the presentation. It'll get submitted to the state. March 22nd is the deadline, but we'll probably have it in before that. And then the next thing we'll see will be in May when we have our budget hearing at the May, I want to say I forget the exact date, first board meeting in May.
Thank you. That's all we have, Dory.
Can I just make a quick shout out, I guess, to you guys for all of the budget information that was included in this packet. It's been, this is my third go around looking at this level of detail on budgets, not to mention seeing it as a participant, I guess 4 years ago. And I've never felt so made aware through the documents that you've sent, Rich. And, you know, everything from the included, not included documents, and then the budget overview with the color coding that shows the changes from in various categories. We've never had that level of detail nor like thought put into how it can help us understand the district's budget. So thank you so much. It's been so helpful. And I think this is really shows the benefit of having a permanent BA rather than a series of interim BAs. And it's great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica.
Jen, can you please give the curriculum committee report?
Sure. We also had 2 meetings this month, so lots to unpack. Afternoon schedules at Bayberry and Valley View were discussed. The committee expressed concerns about the afternoon structure. There was also a discussion of unifying the afternoon approach across grade levels and schools. The teachers at Valley View are continuing to email students and copy parents in regards to the office hours that they're asking students to attend, but attendance has still been inconsistent. We discussed virtual climate. A few issues were raised, including continuing to have a strong line of communication with the parents from the teachers, especially about students who are having a large drop in academic performance. Principal Kidd will be working with the math teachers at Valley View to create a uniform written guidelines for the placement recommendations of the students in math. And Ms. Datota gave an update and answered numerous questions about the IEP and 504, processes, including communication and how the IEP and 504 software is linked with Genesis. She went into great detail with the committee as to the various ways the teachers have to access and review these documents. And she also updated the committee on that the 8th grade transition meetings with Watchung Hills Regional High School have not yet started, and that the high school will be scheduling them in March and April, and a notice will go out to the 8th grade families. That's it.
Thank you, Jen. Joe, can you please give the policy committee report?
Sure. So we met on Monday, the 22nd, and we focused on finalizing last edits to the school use facilities policy and regulation, really just focusing on the usage by respective groups within the community. And that's on for a second read this evening.
Okay, thank you. Rich, is there any update as the legislative liaison?
No update this month, this meeting.
Okay, Adam or Amber, are there any updates about community engagement or the town council?
I can go with, I'll give you an update. We had a meeting with Rhea Williams from the Watching Idea Committee. and they offered their assistance in coordinating with a Newark bookstore that can assist in either incorporating books on various cultures into our K through 8 reading syllabi, or just help supplement what we're doing. So either on a rather official basis or more ad hoc, but it was great. I really appreciate their offer to do that. We started discussing a mentor program, high school students to mentor the middle school program, and they're going to look into some virtual performances or field trips for the school. And then I joined the last PTO meeting where they reorganized their bylaws, which clearly took significant effort, which I appreciate. Also, they're always looking for suggestions on fundraising ideas, as well as how to spend their hard-earned funds to help the students' experiences. So, anyone in the community has some good ideas, let them know. And they did ask me to communicate to the board and the administration, really, if you have a wish list, even if it's a pie in the sky wish, let us know, let them know. Maybe they can help us get it. So they're there to help out.
Thank you, Adam. Dave, is there any update from the Somerset County Educational Services Commission?
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend this month, so no report.
Thank you, Dave. Jessica, is there any report from the Somerset County School Boards Association?
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute. Yeah, I'll try to make it brief. These are long meetings and, there's always great information and a lot of good speakers, but there was a meeting on February 10th. Some of the highlights, I guess I heard an update on school board member training. Obviously, it's been virtual for so long, but and it still will be virtual, but they announced, or at least news to me, that weekend-long orientation that some of us were able to get in the years before COVID, they're beefing up the online offerings so that it feels more immersive or comprehensive the way those in-person, three-day weekend training sessions did. So it'll be an 8-week comprehensive course. So surely it's not all day or anything, but I guess it's a series of 8 weeks, an immersive experience, and it has the breakout small group sessions that I know a lot of us really enjoyed. And that's where you learn a lot and pick up, just networking, and everything is so great for those. So I thought that was good news. And then of course they'll have all of their other governance 1, 2, and 3 available in different formats, all virtual. They announced, which I'm sure Rich probably knows, that because sometimes these meetings happen 3 or 4 weeks before the board meeting, so it's like old news, but the CARES Act 2 funding turned out quite a bit larger than the first round. So most public schools should be receiving more funding through that. And, I'm sure Rich is aware. He was also on this meeting. The Consolidation Bill, the Legislative Affairs delegate, or I guess person from school boards usually runs through all the legislative updates, and this one was expected, and as planned or as expected, it did drop over the past couple of days. So now there is a bill in the Senate that encourages consolidation, mainly assisting districts and potentially enticing districts to consolidate. Still said that there's no planned forced consolidation, and if there were, New Jersey school boards would advocate very strongly against that. But anyway, the state's making money available for a study, which I know that's why we have some of the Watchung regional school board members here to talk about later. They talked a little about the whole learning loss issue and cautioned us that there's a growing trend not to use the term learning loss because it's not exactly a loss, it's just a different way that they've been taught this year, depending on, the school's plan. But the key takeaway for me was that they had some research, there has been research done on this, basically based on like what happened in Katrina many years ago, and that remediation doesn't work, but acceleration does. So whenever we return to a full program in person, and I'm sure George has seen studies like this, or at least heard of this, the accelerated model rather than the remediation model would plunge students into the correct grade level and have strategies to supplement and help them make up for whatever was lost without remediating the loss. Other than that, real quickly, there's a new commissioner of education, and it turns out Roger Jinks, our ECS, was her mentor when she was in Morris County. So I think that's a great connection for us to have. He's obviously a big fan of hers, says she's wonderful. She's formed advisory committees. He's on one of them for the county superintendents, but there's a child study team advisory commission. So I thought that was really interesting. She sounds terrific. And then lastly, we saw an NJ School Board's task force report on mental health services in schools. And they talked about advocating unified community approaches. It had a lot of good information, and it is made available to all members. If you want to look at it, or if the administration does, they have the links to that, or I can pass along the link. That's it.
Thank you, Jessica. Amber, is there any update from the New Jersey School Boards Association?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, there is. The NJBSA met on February 5th, and they spoke about the Sustainable Jersey Digital Program, which is just creating a future-ready operation, unlike what happened in 2020 in the beginning. And then the second thing they spoke about was something that, Jessica mentioned as well, was their new virtual self-paced learning online, as far as the mandatory training is concerned for new members. They also spoke about COVID-19 vaccination for teachers, and just how important it is to safely open up schools, but that bear in mind that it's different for each district and depending on what their sizes are. The next item was the resolution, which is 4461, requires states to enter into a contract for COVID-19 related goods and services for purchase by schools. It's in the second reading, and it should be signed, hopefully. It's on the governor's desk is what I'm told, or I heard. It should be signed soon. They also spoke about regionalization, and they spoke about, lastly, was chapter 44, which is proposed right now, but it should be signed, I want to say. I'm not sure exactly when, since Senate has not met, or the Assembly, and they're saying that it should reduce the healthcare contribution for certain schools employees, and that should help our district, depending on what agreement we're in with as far as healthcare costs. And that's it.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
For community engagement, Mrs. Eisenberg Connecton, is there any update from the Borough Council or the PTO?
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Thank you.
Yes, we can.
The mayor and council has wrapped up our multiple budget workshops for all of our various departments and our committees in anticipation of our annual budget. Our recreation committee has a snow sculpture contest that will continue through March 1st for just a few more days, but let's hope that the snow is behind us. The weekly COVID cases are posted on our borough website. You can go to our homepage and click through to see week to week the COVID numbers in our town. And we have openings in our Department of Public Works. All job opportunity details are available on the borough website. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kokiata, is there a WEF update or anyone from WEF? I don't see anybody. Okay, Mrs. Newsom, is there a CPAG update or anyone from CPAG?
Hi there.
I believe Daryl has her hand up.
I didn't realize we were going to go right into PTO. It's a change of order from last time. And I've got a lot of PTO, so it would be remiss if I didn't continue on. The PTO's had a busy few months. A few of our past activities were mentioned already, so thank you for those who have been paying attention. The PTO passed a brand new set of bylaws at our past meeting. They are up on our website if you want to review them. Last week, we hosted a Kindness Rocks Zoom painting party where our kids took home individual painting kits, painted rocks with inspirational and uplifting messages, and are placing them around town. So please keep your eyes out if you see a painted rock and have a hashtag on the back that says Watchdown BTO. If you found one of them, take a picture, upload it to social media, and please tag the BTO so the kids can see how their rocks have traveled around town and who they've interacted with along the way. And thanks to the Home Depot of Watchung for providing the supplies for that. And also a big thanks to Duck Donuts in Greenbrook for providing vouchers to our students who pledged their random acts of kindness. It's been Random Act of Kindness Month, so our Random Acts of Kindness pledges are still going on, as well as our fundraiser that wraps up at the end of this month. We have a survey out to all of our families through March 5th. We're hoping to get as much input as possible from our families about what they'd like to see in the coming months of this school year. We also have the crayon initiative, so you can bring your old and broken crayons to bins at the Bayberry and Valley View foyers. Those crayons will be sent to the crayon initiative, melted, made into new crayons, and sent to children's hospitals across the US. We've got 2 upcoming events. In March, Friday, March 12th is going to be our family dinner Dine to Donate with Ellery's, followed by a Zoom magic show, which will be free to our PTO members. And Friday, March 19th, we're planning on some pizza kits so you can go home and make your own pizzas. We have a Bayberry yearbook that's for sale. It's a pretty incredible yearbook this year. You can customize personal pages, remotely sign each other's yearbooks. If you upload pictures and tag them Bayberry yearbook on social media, we'll make sure they get included into the book. It's a pretty inventive yearbook, well beyond what I'm used to from my years at Bayberry. And as always, we've got Merino's Mondays, Wasu Wednesdays, our Spirit wares for sale. We've got our box tops program, schoolstore.com, Amazon Smile. Make sure you select Watchung Borough Parent Teacher Organization, and anything that you shop on Amazon, a percentage will come to the PTO as donation, as well as our birthday sign rental with now a pinata add-on. So we've been really busy. Everything is up on our website, watchungpto.com, and we thank everyone for all of their support.
Thank you, Daryl. Mrs. Williams, is there an idea update? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So comments from the public on agenda items. We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for public comment is towards the end of the meeting. Total time allotted for public comment is 30 minutes. Before you make your comment, please state your name and address. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 3 minutes duration. Comments submitted to the board secretary prior to the meeting will be read first. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather are offered as opportunities to share input with the board. In instances where the board feels a response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comment. New Jersey statutes do not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring in public session. Names of students should not be used. Mr. Pepe, will you please read the statement due to recording of this meeting?
Members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally legally responsible with potential liability for comments that they make to the board. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by members of the public. I see we have our first hand raised, so I'm going to unmute. Mr. Bali?
Yes, good evening. This is Mayor Keith Ball of 45 Shawnee Drive.
Good evening.
The borough has been planning sports, recreation, and community events for all of our residents for 2021 and beyond, as well as starting planning for events leading up to our centennial anniversary, which is in 2026. For many years, the borough has had a lease with the school district for use of Phillips Field for these events. On October 30th, 2020, the borough submitted the renewal of the lease for another 3 years for the period 2021 to 2023 under the same terms as the prior leases. The lease has not been signed, nor has it been returned by the school board to the borough. In seeking to coordinate all of the events and activities for our residents, we would like to know if the lease that was submitted will be signed, and if so, when, so we can adequately plan for 2021 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bala. Any other comments from the public on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to action items. Jessica, can you please move the administrative items?
Sure. I move administrative items A1, approve meeting minutes. A2, accept schools security drill report.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
You're on mute.
Me? I'm not on mute.
No.
No, I was. I was.
Okay.
I apologize. I knew that was going to happen sooner or later. Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Buccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Abstain on January 7th, yes on January 28th. And yes on A2.
thank you. Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Mobus,
Abstain on the meetings and yes on the third item.
on the security drill, you're a yes, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Murad, Mrs. Scharf, Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
motion's passed.
Jen, can you please move personnel items?
Yes. I move personnel B1, accept resignation with regret. B2, appoint district technology specialist. B3, appoint district substitute. B4, appoint extracurricular personnel. B5, approve extension of medical leave.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please. Oh, hold on.
Sorry. Zoom delay. I will say I wish Mrs. Freitas well on her new adventure in life.
Well said. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Buccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Mobus,
Yes.
Mrs. Murad,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
motion's passed.
Okay. Rich, can you please move operation items?
Sure. I move approval payment of bills, approve transfer of funds, item C2. Item C3, accept financial reports. Item C4, authorize waiver of requirements for special education Medicaid initiative. C5, accept youth service commission grants. C6, approve professional travel and related expenses. And that's it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Jen.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Buccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Mobus,
Yes.
Mrs. Murad,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
Joe, can you please move policy items?
Sure. Policy items, approved policy and regulation for second reading and adoption, use of school facilities, policy and regulation 7510.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to discuss this policy. As Joe mentioned, this is something we've been reviewing for several months, and it is for second read, although the policy and regulation are not the same as the first read, which doesn't happen that frequently. It's a mandated policy, but it's one that we already have. So the mandated part is revisions to existing policy, and the changes are usually triggered by new legislation or case law. So all of those required updates, like for liability coverage updates or categorization of use and fees and sports requirements, we're all fine. And I do appreciate the administration's due diligence in researching all of those changes over the past several months and adding them. But language had been changed on specifically the regulation, and it changed not just in our policy meeting, which was just 4 days ago or three days ago on Monday night, but it changed Tuesday, and it wouldn't have been in the board packet. And I'd like to discuss that change because I'm no longer comfortable supporting the policy or especially the regulation because of this change in the preamble. Okay, we're calling it a preamble to the regulation that changes the entire scope of the policy and regulation to one that our committee did not contemplate when we were drafting and approving this policy for a second read tonight. So to make it clear what I'm talking about, it's very simple. If you look at the top of the policy, the regulation, it says on Monday night, it said this: the use of Phillips Field will be regulated by Watchung Borough pursuant to the provisions of the written lease between the borough and the Board of Education. That was in this on Monday. Today's version reads as follows: this regulation will govern the use of Phillips Field unless a written lease between the Board of Education and another entity is currently in effect. If a lease is in effect, then the use of Phillips Field will be regulated by the lessee. So I'm very uncomfortable, effectively cutting the borough out of the Phillips Field lease in a vague policy or regulation change in language that was introduced the day after we met on Monday, which I think is, another lapse in appropriate discussion and timing. So procedural concerns aside, I think all board members now should really understand the implications of changing this language before they vote on it. And I want to just share my concerns about what those might be. So to start out, Phillips Field use was never contemplated in any legitimate way during the revisions of this policy and regulation, because during the months and months that we've been reviewing it, Phillips Field was not within the scope of this policy or regulation. The testament to that is simply the preamble that I just read, which is that Phillips Field will be governed separately through lease. So as I had these meetings and maybe had some foresight, asked questions about what's the status of the lease or how would you manage this, I was constantly told that's the operations committee and this policy, doesn't govern Phillips Field. So, but now with this preamble, it becomes literally subject, Phillips Field becomes subject to the policy because it's right there in the language. So this is a catch-22 that we were not prepared for and certainly didn't contemplate on Monday. So much goes on at Phillips Field that, with this new language, which I saw Tuesday night, I don't recommend that the procedure outlined in these policy documents be applied to that field. It just isn't appropriate or efficient or fair to the community who scheduled the town. We had the mayor just say that they're scheduling activities for the spring. And I did watch their budget meetings, which took place probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And they did go through a long list of activities that were planned. And most of them are annual activities that the town is very familiar with, like the Easter egg hunt and the movie night. And, they're counting on these activities. And actually the rec director, Linda Minetti, had said in her introduction to her budget that it's so important this year, more important than ever, to give the community a sense of coming back together safely after a year in which there was really nothing for the community and nothing for recreation and nothing for kids' sports and stuff. So the borough is still expecting to lease Phillips Field, at least they were during this budget hearing and apparently still are based on the mayor's comments tonight. But time is running out. I mean, in order to do these things, I think that an agreement has to be made. And again, I'm not comfortable defaulting to the terms that are outlined in this policy. I don't think it's a good alternative. And it never, was really intended to be an alternative to a lease with the borough. So as far as any other lessee, because that's mentioned in the policy change that came across, to me Tuesday, and I guess to the rest of the board today, that concept is introduced by this new policy language, but it's never really been discussed with the board. Now, I'm aware that there have been private conversations with youth sports organizations about leasing the field instead of the borough. I just, think it's appropriate at this point in discussing this policy to share with the board that I don't think that's comprehensive enough to encompass all the various events that are traditionally held at Phillips Field and that it sounds like from the budget presentation, are planned for just this spring alone. It seems unnecessarily complicated and almost a little backwards to expect a small youth sports league or leagues that are run by volunteer parents to administer the use of Phillips Field back to the town or instead of the town, who has decades of experience planning these events on those fields, a paid rec director who has done it all those years, and a Department of Public Works staff. Not to mention the time constraints in, drafting a lease that could encompass all of that and contemplate all of those complexities for March. So without those two, without a Phillips Field lease for the town, and if we decide, as I think we should, that it's probably unwise to contract out with various sports leagues because it leaves so much out, it essentially forces field use, and this is my primary concern, to be governed by this facility's use policy and regulation, which would have our schools, and I guess that's George and Rich, or their principals, acting as rec commissioners and doing all the paperwork and scheduling with a learning curve because they're new to the district and they've never done this before. And I just don't see how that is efficient for this district at this time. We can be talking about so many other things, and I think the administration has so many plates in the air with hybrid learning, returning kids to school, all of the learning loss issues and how we look in the fall. These are all things that I wish we had discussed in committee, but we had a committee meeting Monday night and the language was not presented. So, I hope that there can be some flexibility and, maybe not having this policy approved at this time. I can't support this language because I think it has the potential to hamper town-wide youth and community activities. I do support renewing the lease to the town, which would eliminate, all of these concerns. And so if that can be accomplished, then this policy could go back and reflect the agreement using the preamble language from Monday night. And I think it's fine in that way. So those are my thoughts on this. And I'd appreciate hearing, from anyone else that
I'll respond to that, Jessica, if it's okay, and thank you for your comments. So I do respectfully disagree in one sense. So yes, there were modest changes made to the preamble and then subsequently shared. I don't believe them to be material, but in any case, let's just go through it a little bit. You're right that these were previously in place and specifically spoke about Watchung Borough, but this is a policy and regulation for use of school facilities, which would naturally include the field, which would be part of that, just like any other field or facility of the school. I think previously, and part of the reason for the changes has nothing to do with the lease currently in the operations committee for review and discussion. And I don't want to conflate it with the policy and regulation because they're really unrelated to an extent. The more generally, in the school's policy and regulation, we wouldn't really be addressing specifically Watchung Borough just because we did in the past, or just because previously there were leases in the past with Watchung Borough. That may ultimately happen again, and as it did in the past, and that's in the operation committee. And if so, so be it. And nothing changes. We just generalize the language more to leaseor or leasee because we don't yet know what's going to ultimately happen, and we didn't want to have that in the policy stated that way if in the event anything changes. So, I think we're talking about two different things. One is, hey, the school manages and has ownership of the field and has to make decisions regarding the field as the leaseor, and whether the leasee happens to be the school, the Watchung Borough as it has in the past or not is irrelevant. This is just general language for purposes of the policy and regulation. So that's why we just generalized it more, because I'm not sure why the borough of Watchung is noted in a Board of Education regulation and policy. There's just two separate things. That's all. It's just generalized, and it doesn't prevent the board and the committee from ultimately signing the lease with Watchung Borough. And if that's the case, great. Then still nothing's wrong with the policy or regulation. It's the same thing. So that's my view.
And that's how I read it too. So I'm okay with the wording.
I'd like to say that, yeah, that's exactly the way I read it. It doesn't preclude a lease with the town, and maybe now is not the time to discuss it, and I wasn't planning on it, but with the comments from, no less than the mayor of the town and me being the chairman of the operation committee that has actually the job of reviewing this and recommending it, I'd like to tell the town the whole story. And the whole story is, yeah, we got a lease tendered to us in October. But before that, we had a call from certain members of the town council, wanted to talk to us. And they said, hey, we got an idea that we can raise some revenue and make money off of Phillips Field. How do you feel about having private events there, having a wedding, charging people to use it for corporate events, doing a lot of commercialization of the field. And that was, people are saying, yeah, we've been doing this for years and years and years. And yeah, I've been a resident for almost 30 years now. And I guess they have been doing it for years and years and years. Nobody ever mentioned commercialization of the field. That's an idea that gives me the shivers, quite frankly. I mean, I can't imagine, telling your kid, when my kids were little or even now, sorry, son, or sorry, daughter, we can't go play catch at Phillips Field today because there's a wedding with 350 people under a big tent. So that was quite, that gave us pause as an operations committee to think about, like, what's really is the intention of the town with respect to this. And so We had a couple other meetings and it was still unclear. Then the town raised the possibility of a shared services agreement with the district, which we thought was a great idea. We asked them for a draft of that agreement 3 months ago. We said, look, if we're going to do a shared services agreement and we're looking at a Phillips Field lease, it just makes sense to look at them both together. 3 months ago. Have we gotten a shared services agreement draft yet? The answer is no. We also asked them how many events are there? What's the nature of the events? Do you have a log of the events? Can you show us how many groups use it and what its use is? Is it 4 times a year you give a permit, or is it 104 times? No answer. So I'm a little bit taken aback by the mayor's comments that seemed to imply that the operations committee of the Board of Education was not doing its job and is sitting on a lease. Contrary to the first year I was on the board, when we tendered the town a lease and they didn't sign it until after the first of the year, when it wasn't such a big rush back then for some reason, apparently. And we tendered that to them 6 months ahead of time. So I'm confused by what all's going on here and why this is a hot topic and why people are basically saying that, the operations committee of the board is sitting on its hands when we've been waiting for responses from the town. So I just wanted to clear that up because I didn't like that suggestion or that implication. Thank you.
Well said, Red.
This is Dave. I would like to share some thoughts about the Phillips Field lease. As a longtime member of the Recreation Commission in town, I think I served 6 years on that committee, as well as being the council liaison to the committee, and having been 4 years on the council finance committee. I would just implore our board that what would be, the best thing for the town and for the, specifically, the kids in our town and the residents would be to have robust recreation programs. And to stand in the way of that, I think would be a very bad move for us to, as a board, to do. And I think the key to that is to sign the lease and get the lease to the borough like we normally do and get those programs underway. I understand there's some concerns, but I'm pretty confident that they can all be answered. And we should get the answers and we should act on that quickly. I don't think there's really much reason to delay any length of time. And I just feel very strongly that we should go forward with the lease with the town. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, because I do have a lot of back knowledge on that. Thank you.
I would, I'm on that operations committee as well, and I would disagree with the assumption that not signing the lease negatively affects the kids and the town. We haven't discussed on this call anything about how we would operationalize the usage of that field. We have ability to do that. We need the administration to comment on that, and we're dealing with all of that within the committee. So to make a statement in public that not signing the lease is unfair to anyone is, to me, very nearsighted and should be really considered. There should be conversations with the operations committee prior to making a statement like that.
Well, time is short, so those conversations should happen soon.
Again, there's ways to get the activities scheduled. We own the fields, right? Just because the town doesn't have the lease doesn't mean these activities won't take place. So we don't feel the pressure. And again, these are things that we're talking about all the time. But just since this is coming up now, might as well keep going with it. We don't feel the need to succumb to pressure just to do things the way that have always been done. We want to make sure it truly is in the best interest of the students and the school district, and not just get strong-armed by, again, no less than the mayor coming onto our meeting and implying that we're doing something to hurt someone, which is absolutely not the case. And anyone who has been on the board meetings with this board should know that by now.
I just think it's important, Adam, that, you know, the whole impetus for this discussion for me was because I'm so concerned that if there isn't any agreement in place with the town, this policy governs just what you said, that we're going to be patching together, kind of cobbling together a whole slew of townwide activities through the way you would schedule the APR for a Girl Scout meeting. I mean, that's truly an example of what was contemplated when we reviewed and reviewed and reviewed this policy over probably 4 months, I feel like. So, you know, we reviewed using the APR as a cooling or warming station during emergencies. We reviewed basketball, rec basketball, which is routinely, we really tried to contemplate the uses and the schedule of the fees and all the different requirements. At no time did we contemplate, I certainly would have objected strongly, making our central office schedule townwide picnics or schedule, you know, authorized field use for the movie night or for the town Easter egg hunt. I mean, those are things that we have a borough rec department who does that. And they do the appropriate insurance, or they do the appropriate, you know, I don't know what they do. And I think that's the point. We don't know what they do. And they do it. So I think it's very different. You know, you make a good point. It kind of underscores the issue with this policy is that now our offices will be doing that at the board. And again, I just feel that's very inappropriate and excessive to put on our administration.
So I agree with the comment that we don't want to overload the administration, but the two very key facts that we're missing from this discussion are how many activities are we talking about, which Rich mentioned we asked for and we don't know, right? So it could be one, it could be two. I'm pretty sure anyone can handle two, but we don't know. It could be 100. The second part is this shared services agreement that we're waiting for a draft, right? That shared services agreement could take into account the management of the facilities that we're talking about. And we don't need to have a $1 lease to do that. So again, we're not stalling. This field is there for use. We have processes in place, and we're just trying to make the best decisions for the board and for the town and for the district.
If I can add one thing, again, the policy and the regulation is agnostic as to what happens, whether a lease is signed with the borough, whether it's a shared services agreement,
right?
Whether Mr. Pepe and Mr. Alexis are going to manage it, it doesn't matter. All the policy and regulation says is that the field, amongst the other parts of the facilities that the school owns, be used for the various things mentioned. So yes, separate discussion, pros and cons about the lease, whatever is going to happen with the town. Again, separate that. That still goes on. Policy and regulation doesn't matter. It's basically leaseor, leasee, if that happens. So, you know, I just, you know, with respect, I don't feel the need to have to interject and put the borough in the policy and regulation again. And respectfully, I don't want to have any more discussions on the use of school facilities, policy and regulation, you know, to just save my sanity for looking at this document for the past 2 months. So I don't think it's a material change. It's agnostic. Read it for yourself. If people disagree, that's fine. Everyone has their own opinion. Then we don't have to proceed with it. But otherwise, I think it's, you know, it's you can read it for yourself. It's doesn't matter which way we go ultimately with the town. So it's neutral. I'll just
So-
leave it at that.
So are there any further discussions about the policy or the regulation, or can we move to a roll call? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Buccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
No.
Mr. Kraft,
Yep.
Mr. Mobus,
No.
Mrs. Murad,
Yes.
Mrs. Sharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're going to move on to board business. There's a item on here for a regionalization and feasibility study, and I wanted to welcome Bob and Gregory to the board. They came this evening. Jen and I had the pleasure of speaking to Gregory last week. And they were kind enough to come to the board. I provided the board with all of the feedback that Jen and I could remember from the brief meeting we had. But we felt it was probably best to have them come and join us in case there were any questions that other board members had regarding what the high school is doing with a feasibility study. So welcome, and I give you both the floor.
Thanks very much, Doreen. Appreciate the board's time and allowing Bob and I to share with all of you where we're at in the concept of regionalization and how we would like to engage your support. It almost seems like it was serendipitous that we were thinking about this over the past couple of years, and then those of you who get the emails from school boards see that the legislature is moving forward with funding and removing barriers to try to accommodate studies of regionalization and potentially achieving that in appropriate locations. Our goal when we've talked about this over the last few years has been really primarily to focus on what the educational benefits would be of having a cooperative regionalized system as opposed to individual school districts sending to the high school alignment of curriculum, for example. While cost savings are often discussed and potentially exist, really not the primary goal. And we feel in an environment of fiscal challenges and responsibility that it's really our obligation to be able to study this type of concept to see if in fact it is feasible from both an educational and financial perspective. I recall about a decade ago when I sat on the K-8 Warren board that both Warren and Watchung had discussed this concept and considered pooling together money to study this. In looking at the regulations that existed at that time, it almost seemed like it would be an insurmountable task, and ultimately we abandoned it. But it appears now that a path has been created in which the state is going to support the cost of doing a study, and the study can be fairly broad in nature. For example, our thoughts include different concepts of working together, which might include the 3 districts that currently have, for lack of a better term, an ownership stake in the high school, that being Watchung, Long Hill, and Warren. Whether that would involve our tuition-paying district, Greenbrook, as an equity partner as well. Are there other alternatives? And I think all of us would likewise be interested in updating demographic studies because the number of students we're anticipating, particularly with affordable housing developments, really may influence how we manage the properties that we're all responsible for. And so that can be part of this as well, all being supported by the state. As Dory had pointed out, I believe there is really not an obligation to follow through with the recommendations of the study. So for example, if they recommend that regionalization should be done, it really will be up to each of our constituencies to determine whether that in fact is the best thing for us or not. Our obligation really will be to share the information that's gathered with the state. And with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Bob. Bob has been our ad hoc chair to look at this. What he has been able to accomplish is organizing a bunch of information that we're happy to share with everyone, and has had a presentation from folks from Trenton to give us a concept of what this would look like, timetable, etc. And he can fill in some of the details that I have not covered.
Thank you, Greg, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and we appreciate the invitation to share the information that we've learned about this and talk about potential pathways moving forward. The idea of the regionalization study is just to see what is the feasibility of combining all or portions of our districts together. And I think that before we can even talk about whether or not it's a good idea, we need to have a lot of information. And the whole idea behind the regionalization feasibility study is to gather that information and present it in a way that will allow each of our individual districts to have a better understanding of what the potential benefits are and what the potential downsides may be. And part of that includes, as Greg mentioned, an updated demographic study, which we all need currently because of the affordable housing that is going on in each of our communities. That would be funded through this process. And an evaluation of the educational impact, as Greg said. The real reason to do this is because there's going to be a significant educational benefit to our students. The fact that there may be additional tax savings to our taxpayers also should be investigated, given the fact that, at least in the township of Warren, 65% of our tax bills going to education. So if there is a way for us to find appropriate measures to manage that better, it's worth at least taking a look at it. There would be a staffing study, an analysis of cost share, and obviously a tax impact study. One of the things that's always been a barrier to this whole concept, as Greg alluded to, is that there have been significant regulatory barriers in place that makes it nearly impossible to actually consider regionalization. But with the legislation that was introduced on Monday, the School Boards Association actually put out a report in 2018 that listed all of the barriers that needed to be addressed legislatively. The bill that was released on Monday and will be public on March 4th basically is addressing the removal of all those barriers. So the timing seems to be right. The funding is there to be able to pay for it. And as a community, we could collaborate together on this process as a group of districts to make sure that it plays out in a timeline and in a manner which makes the most sense to each of our communities and our administrations, given the other challenges that we are dealing with right now as it relates to getting our schools open or preparing to open them in the fall. So, that's just some of the highlights. As I understand it, you have some information. We plan on sharing a link to a Dropbox with or to a Google Drive with additional information, but happy to answer any questions you may have, regarding this particular topic.
And I would add that our ask is your consideration of this, and ultimately your passing of a resolution in support of a group effort in this effort. And ultimately, What we would like to see is an enlarged ad hoc committee that would be made up of representatives from each of the districts that would then take this forward as more information is gathered and a proposal was put together.
Any
You
board members have
mentioned-
questions?
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned that the municipalities that I had understood in the past when this has been talked about for like 20 years, I guess, the municipalities do have to vote to approve any regionalization. And if all don't, no regionalization happens, or if some do, they can regionalize. How does that work?
Actually, I can take that one. We actually had just, kind of reviewed this the other day. So what happens is if it's determined that individual districts want to have a regionalization vote, what they will do is it will go out to the public. And once it goes out to the public, when the vote is passed or when the vote is held, if, say, there are 4 districts that are involved, and 3 out of the 4 approve the passage, and a majority across all the districts approve of the passage, then the 3 districts that approved it can go ahead with a regionalization, and the 4th one that did not approve it would be able to then negotiate some other relationship with the newly configured regionalized district, if that's the way that it went together. So, and part of the study would be to look at what might the options look like based on different configurations of approval.
And nothing about Long Hill being in a different county would have any adverse effect on regionalization, just like it doesn't for this high school. Okay.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I have a point of view I can share with the board. We have, as a board, made tremendous strides in this district in affecting change in the last 2 years with a completely new administration at the district level and in both schools. I think all of those changes have been positive and have helped the district try and succeed to, even though our job isn't done, to get back to where the Watchung school system was when I moved in 29 years ago. We have a tremendous amount of work in front of us right now. We have a referendum that was done 21 years ago that expired 3 years ago. And we, if you caught part of this meeting, really are concentrating on trying to fix what we have here in Watchung to make the best educational experience for the children of the town and for the residents as a whole. I looked a little bit. I know there's new legislation, but the last time there was new legislation was almost 30 years ago. And since that new legislation made it easier 30 years ago to do regionalization, there's been exactly 2 of them. And we've been talking, I've heard talk about this for decades. I think, as my general personality is that I never turn away new data and new information, but I also always prioritize what I should be working on. And I think right now we need to work on getting the funding to keep our schools running. And I think that putting time and energy into that during a time of a pandemic and then taking on another ad hoc committee with regionalization is going to be, very burdensome on the district, but also I'm very, I'm very apprehensive about what it's going to do for the chances of a referendum passing when people think, well, we're going to be regionalized, so why should I, vote for a referendum that's going to, benefit our schools when then I'm going to have to do the same thing for all the other sending districts. And I know you guys know all about equalization and tax rates and everything like that, but it's very, very complicated and it's very, very uncertain. And complexity and uncertainty are bad things when you're trying to get something done like a referendum. So my feeling is maybe it's a good idea, but it's certainly the wrong time for our district. That's my personal opinion.
Any other board members have comments or questions? Okay, well, Gregory and Bob, thank you for joining us this evening. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out to come and speak with us. And then we will get in touch with you because I don't think, since it's just a discussion, I'm sure the board will probably, I know you guys also said that you were looking to have the, I don't know if it was a company or the state who came in who did a presentation for the high school. You were looking to have them do a presentation for all the sending districts. And I'm just going to kind of go out on a limb here for our board and probably assume that our board doesn't necessarily want to create an ad hoc to just see this, that they might actually want the entire board to see the presentation, unless any board members disagree with that. Okay, so then we'll work with the two of you through, Mr. Alexis and Mr. Pepe as well to see what we can schedule for them to come in and give us the same information that every other district would be receiving.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you very much on behalf of Bob and I and the whole Watchung Hills Regional High School Board of Education. We appreciate the time that you've offered us to speak at your meeting. I'm sorry that we're adding to the length of your meeting by this, but hopefully we've provided you with a little bit of insight in the direction that we're going and keeping all the districts informed of what our hope and goal is.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay, and another item for board business is a board resolution. And this is a resolution requesting Governor Murphy to include public school district personnel in the official expert vaccine allotment panels definition of frontline workers. So if each board member, just like we do with every other resolution, can go around and read a part of the resolution, that would be great.
I'll start. Whereas the Watchung Borough Board of Education recognizes that the United States, the state of New Jersey, and local health authorities, as well as the World Health Organization, have declared a public health emergency regarding the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, and
whereas the federal and state authorities have put in place guidance detailing the precautionary measures schools must implement to stop its spread of this disease, and
Whereas public schools have a profound impact on millions of students, families, and staff, and are charged with the care, education, nourishment of their students, and are an you remember, it's one of those words, integral part of health and safety of our communities. And
whereas our district has responded to the challenges brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, providing students and staff members with the technology and resources necessary to ensure the efficient delivery of instruction virtually and in person. And
Whereas the board has a substantial public interest in protecting the health and safety of its students, staff, and community, and ensuring that the district can provide staff and students with a safe and effective educational environment that supports student achievement. And
whereas I can't find the attachment with the language.
It's all right. Where is the board?
I'll go, Rich.
Okay, go ahead.
And whereas the board recognizes that this health emergency made it necessary to close schools and reinvent the educational programs in a virtual setting, and that this may have an adverse impact on student achievement and the emotional and social well-being of students. And
whereas the COVID-19 vaccine plan published by the State of New Jersey Department of Health prioritizes the availability of vaccines to essential workers in phase 1B of the vaccine protocol. And
whereas school district staff at all levels are essential to the day-to-day operations of this district, responsible for the thorough and efficient education of all students and their social and emotional well-being, are critical for virtual and in-class instruction, and are essential workers.
now, therefore, it be resolved, the Watchung Borough Board of Education finds a substantial public purpose exists to request that Governor Murphy give appropriate priority in the statewide administration of the COVID-19 vaccine to all public school districts personnel. And then resolves that a copy of this resolution shall be forwarded to the members of Legislative District 21, Senator Thomas Keene Jr., Assemblyman John Bramnick, Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz, Assembly Speaker Craig Coltlin, Senate President Stephen Sweeney, Governor Phil Murphy, and to the New Jersey School Boards Association. And now, does anyone have any other business to discuss? Any other board business to discuss? Okay, we'll move into comments from the public.
Do we have to vote on that?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably should vote to adopt the resolution.
Oh,
sorry.
Brought that up, Rich. I think you should, Dory.
Okay, my apologies.
We can send it to those designated folks in the legislature.
Okay, so then can someone make a motion?
I can do
To
that
adopt the
without the
resolution?
language. I make a motion to adopt the resolution that was just read.
Okay, a second?
Second, Jen.
Any discussion? Roll call, please. Rich?
Sorry, I was muted again. Okay, Mr. Barbella,
yes.
Mr. Buccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
yes,
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Mobus,
Yes.
Mrs. Murad,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
motion passes.
And is there any other board business any other board member would like to discuss? Okay, comments from the public. This is on any topic. Please remember to state your name and address before speaking, and please raise your hand so Mr. Pepe knows who to unmute.
Okay, first I will read the comments that were sent in. We have two of them tonight. Number one is from Susan Kleinberg. Dear Mr. Alexis and the members of the board, I'm grateful that Bayberry children are able to attend school in person 5 days per week. I'm wondering when the same will be possible at Valley View. I find that my middle school child is really struggling with the inconsistency of an in-person versus remote days. He is not nearly as engaged in the remote model. The class sizes are very small, about 5 to 6 kids max per cohort. I believe we can safely combine the cohorts similar to the Bayberry model. Additionally, I am wondering if students will be able to attend school for a full day. They need more time in the classroom with their teachers. Math 3 times per week is not nearly enough for middle school children. How will they be ready for high school? Please consider extending the school day for both schools to the normal hours and bringing the middle school students back to school 5 days a week. Thank you. Okay, our second comment is from Geraldine Lawrence. My name is Geraldine Lawrence. I have 2 4th graders at Bayberry. Finally, the kids are back in school 5 days per week. The day is still ending early, however. When is the board planning on resuming a full day, 5 day per week schedule? Thank you all very much for your time and consideration. Geraldine Lawrence. And next up we have Kathy. I'm going to allow you to unmute now. Kathy Stotler, it looks like. I'm sorry, I can't read my screen very well. I've given you the ability to unmute. Are you interested in speaking? Okay, I'll come back
No,
if
I'm
she's
so
still interested.
sorry.
Oh, there you go.
My phone was, it's a new phone and I'm not quite sure I know how to work it completely. My name is Kathy Stotler. I live at 92 Brookdale Road. I just wanted to thank you so much for all you've done to keep our schools safe so far. But like the other comments I just heard, moving forward, I truly ask that you consider 5 day a week instruction for all of our students. Some of the classes that my daughters attend at Valley View have 6 students in the classroom in person. And I know of schools in the county who have made it possible for up to 20 students in a room with the safety precautions. Perhaps a survey asking the community who would be willing to stay virtual and those who would really like to stay in person would allow you to decide if it's possible for us to bring those who have interest back 5 days a week. In the meantime, I also ask what the district is doing to monitor disengaged students and what extra measures are being taken to monitor and connect with those students who are falling behind. Finally, I appreciate the consideration of regionalization. I believe that would contribute in a positive way to our children's education and even the playing field for them entering high school. And as a final note, thank you so much for the resolution to prioritize the vaccinations of teachers. I feel that it will make them feel safer and create a safer environment for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Karen Locke, you're up next.
Like this. You're doing it too hard.
Hi, this is Karen Locke. I'm at 107 Park Place. So I just want to start off by also echoing the thanks to the board for everything that you've done this year. I know it's been particularly challenging and we really appreciate everything that you're doing. So thank you very much. So I'm just concerned with the going back to the facilities use policy, particularly with the insurance and indemnification section. So I have 3 questions in particular. One is I want to clarify whether every organization is going to be required of having insurance with the specified policy coverage. Because from my understanding, not every organization has had to do this in the past. And my second question is, there's no mention of adding the Board of Education as additional insured. And this is something that has been asked of the PTO recently. And is this something that is also being asked of every applicant? And then in my third question is, this is a very high policy coverage and adding the board as additional insured is also going to be an additional cost for applicants and organizations. So we're concerned with that additional cost and being that organizations have already budgeted for this year and planned their budget for this year. And it's a very challenging year. can this requirement be held off until next year?
Thank you very much. I don't know, Joe Barbella, did you feel comfortable answering any of those? I know there were certain things in the policy, but
Yeah, I can at least address one of them briefly, and Mr. Pepe, please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the expectation and my understanding is that usage of the field would coincide with indemnification and appropriate insurance for whoever is using it. So I'm not aware of a situation where there would be usage of the field where some form or level of insurance wouldn't be in place. Mr. Pepe, I know this came up as part of our committee meeting, but am I mistaken on that, or I'm pretty sure it was part of our discussion?
All right, Mr. Barbella, I can answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, the policy, the regulation that was adopted does have the additional insured language. Now that the policy and regulation are adopted, everyone will be asked to comply with it before the facilities are allowed for use by any user that applies. We based all of that, as we discussed in committee, based on the recommendations of the insurance broker and legal advice also. So yes, the policy and regulation will apply to everyone going forward. And there is additional insured language in the regulation now, which matches the facilities use form. But I certainly understand the concerns of the PTO.
thank you.
And then, thank you. I'm sorry if I could just follow up. I just want to see if that's something that can be implemented next year, being that most organizations that hold these events for our students if that can be held off until next year, being that it's going to be an additional cost.
So
I believe once we sign,
Yeah.
once the policy is voted, it's in effect immediately.
So exactly the policy and the regulation has been approved this evening, so it's in force. I mean, certainly we can take it offline and consider for those whoever is going to wind up using the field and lease the field or through some shared services agreement or what have you. We can consider situations where depending on the entity, and usually it's going to be a nonprofit, a 501c3, what their insurance status is or what the situation is with them having or not having insurance. And we can discuss it offline separately in a committee meeting if we believe there can be modifications here or amendments. But just so people understand, right, if someone it's a school facility, if individuals outside of the school want to use the facility, obviously if something goes wrong or there's some harm or damage, there's liability. This country has plenty of attorneys, and that's part of the consideration, and we have insurance requirements as part of the school, so we need to protect the school. Not that we're envisioning any problems, but the whole point of having that insurance is ultimately for protection against liability in the event it should happen. But I appreciate the comment made in the question, and I appreciate obviously during these challenging times that there's tight budgets and everything else. So we can take that offline. I'm happy to do so as part of our committee. If anything can be done in situations where any nonprofit group or community group doesn't have the requisite insurance or coverage, we can talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Any other comments from community members? Okay, seeing that there are none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.